Hello there to all the amazing people watching this video on my channel. In this video I will share with you my opinion on why the Lord of the Rings films trilogy is a masterpiece and it won't be repeated. So without any further delay, are you ready? Let's get started! Before the first film came out in 2001, many big Tolkien fans were eager and anxious to see the extraordinary world of Middle-earth come alive in the big screen. These days, when such a production is getting ready for the world, the expectations are always high and the demands for the audiences are even higher. Imagine back then just how hard it was to create not a single fantasy film, but a whole trilogy. And not just create it, but make it an absolute masterpiece that went on to win 17 Oscars. Now, just what were the reasons why the Lord of the Rings trilogy was so successful and stands out when compared to other similar franchises? Now, one might say that when you're adapting such a series of novels, then nothing can go wrong and it will be a success no matter what. Well, no. It might be a box office success, but not praised by critics, or the other way around. So, in order to impress audiences, critics, the Academy, and all the prestigious people in the film industry, something must be done perfectly. And that's what Peter Jackson and his team did. They settled for nothing less than perfect on every aspect of the trilogy. First things first, pre-production. The movies were planned and executed well. They spent 3 damn years in pre-production before the camera even rolled. Jackson made sure every film got at least 1 year in post-production as well, so that he could cut it down without stress. And he hired a different editor for each film, so that no one editor will have the burden of cutting multiple films. None of those things were present in The Hobbit. Jackson didn't have the time and was still tinkering with the films mere hours before its premiere. Next, sticking to the source material. Peter Jackson and his team, being big fans of Tolkien's world, wanted to pay respect to every little detail described by Tolkien in the books, and at the same time, cut down the parts that simply wouldn't do well in the films. Everything made with attention and respect to the writings of Tolkien, and of course, with Peter Jackson never being satisfied with anything less than 100%. There are plenty of people that work in the trilogy that complimented Jackson for his patience and work ethic, despite his high demands, since he would always find a tiny detail to make things better, even when the respective artists thought it was perfect. Moving on, casting. Believe it or not, nowadays a big upcoming film might fail just because of the big stars that are in the films. Whether because they are not fit for the role, or just because their salary is too high, and most of all, because most of the time the actors are bigger than the film itself. So people are going to watch the actor and not the story in the film. That was different with the Lord of the Rings cast. Most of the actors weren't movie stars at the time. They were all picked on merit and whether because they fit the characters on the page. And that's why it's hard, if not impossible, to find an actor in the series that was not extremely fitting to the character he played. Peter Jackson had the films above all else, and even though he approached big names for certain roles, such as Anthony Hopkins, Sean Connery and Daniel Day-Lewis, in the end, the absence of big movie stars in the trilogy was one of the reasons why the film did so well. Next up, practical effects. Visually, the Lord of the Rings were shot on film, which lent perfectly to this almost historical quality of the story, and the films were made at the perfect time where digital effects were getting really good, but where films were still using practical effects. It was a perfect balance. In the latter years, directors would most often purely rely on CGI, and the results sometimes are not well received. Another factor that played a major role: low budget. Yes, believe it or not, the Lord of the Rings trilogy is indeed considered a low-budget production for its size. The cost of Peter Jackson's original Lord of the Rings films combined adds up to just $281 million. For 3 freaking films, for nearly 10-hour film content, 12-hour if you include the extended editions. To give you a point of comparison, here is the budget for every Lord of the Rings film, compared to the budget for every Hobbit film, to every Pirates of the Caribbean film, to every Harry Potter film. And of course, when comparing the results, the Lord of the Rings trilogy simply stands out of the rest based on facts, box office, awards and critics. But how exactly did the low budget help? Well, in order to make out most of his budget, Peter Jackson had to squeeze and search and find the best people that could provide the best possible work for the money that they had. He didn't have the backing of unlimited budget studios that costly errors don't really matter. For Jackson and his team, errors did matter, and they wanted to have none of them, because it was nearly impossible to fix or remake anything that didn't go as planned, due to the shortage on the budget. In the end, all the people that worked in the trilogy were not just doing some job. They were there and felt that they were working on something special, and so every single member of the crew was dedicated, providing huge amounts of work. The way Lord of the Rings was shot made it feel like it was real and grounded, almost as though it was a piece of history, even though it's the history of a fantastical world. The groundedness is what attached audiences to the characters and the story. Later movies suffered because they relied more heavily on CGI rather than the practical effects and miniatures that were often used in the Lord of the Rings movies. Such films feel less grounded and remind the audience that they are watching a movie rather than experiencing real events. Money can't fix the way a film is shot, or the overall creative vision of the films. It was the perfect era of cinema for the films to be shot. Most likely, if those films were made today, they would not be that good. And lastly, the story. The original movie trilogy is beloved because it's a series that people can connect with on a deep level, with characters that stick with the audience and a certain magic about it that absorbs you into the world at every turn. The story is about resilience, love, destiny, and legacy. Those themes and the way that the characters connect to each other and struggle with their problems and positions is something that audiences get emotionally attached to. The films have that magical quality to them because it's clear in every frame that these movies were made with passion. From the cast to the crew behind the camera, it's evident that everyone loved the story and what they were doing, and it makes the movies feel like pieces of art that time and effort were put into. And of course, that was justly rewarded by the audience and the box office, by the Academy, by critics, and by every single film or award organization. The trilogy won 17 Oscars out of the 30 it was nominated, and the third film won all 11 Oscars out of all 11 in which was nominated for. In total, the trilogy won 475 awards out of the 800 it was nominated for. 800 awards for 3 films. Just think about it. And with all those reasons mentioned above, that, my friends, is my opinion on why the Lord of the Rings trilogy is a masterpiece and it won't ever be repeated. And that's all, everyone. Thank you for watching. Do you agree with this? And do you like the Lord of the Rings trilogy? Let me know your thoughts on this masterpiece in the comments below. If you like this video, then please be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe and click on the bell to get notifications so that you don't miss the upcoming videos. Till the next one, have an amazing time and I'll see you all later.
It's good.